why can we not have it scheduled? Why can I not know that every Thursday at 1:17 p.m., all right, the team is meeting in the lunchroom and we're going out to rearrange the lot? It just seems like if we're talking about being one of those motivators, right? A structure to me, it's time. Time is a big motivator, but I also find with this next generation of salespeople that are coming in is that they're looking for structure.
Good morning and welcome to a fresh episode of the Coffee with Jason podcast. On today's episode, Jason is jamming with Bill Playford. They'll be chatting about dealer culture, entertaining with your content, and the marathon that is content marketing. Grab that hot closer's coffee and settle in with your host, Jason Harris. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
For freshly brewed discussion on automotive sales and marketing, this is Coffee with Jason. The Coffee with Jason podcast is sponsored by Closer's Coffee. For that full-bodied, rich, sweet flavor with a bright acidity, drink Closer's Coffee, stay caffeinated, and keep on closing. Find out more at closerscoffee.ca.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nations? Jason Harris here with Digital Dealership Solutions. Hey, thanks for joining me on another episode of Coffee with Jason. Today I have my guest, Mr. Bill Playford. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to come jam with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Bill, for everybody out there, and there's probably like the 3 people out there that don't know who you are, how about you give me that quick little intro story of kind of how you got into the business and to where you are today, and then we'll just go ahead and start jamming.
Well, I like to say that I'm too busy seeking the truth to actually seek attention. So I'm guessing it's more than 3 people, but I got started in automotive the same way everybody else did. And that's because I always dreamed to be in the car business. Said no one ever. I actually got into the car business actually after the dot-com bubble burst. I actually worked in venture capital, funding a lot of the companies that were embarrassing and needed to go away. But it was kind of an odd time. But when I was in grad school, actually, I had talked to my friends and we had never knew anybody had a great buying experience buying a car. And so I'm a 4th generation auto worker. I grew up in a GM household. Parents always got good deals, got destroyed on their trades, never had a good experience, never could pick the colors they want. And so after, finance kind of melted down there in 2001, I ended up getting in the car business. And so I was very fortunate to work with a very, probably an originator of the e-commerce business here in Michigan, and did that for about 4 years. I was very lucky that he gave me a lot of latitude, including a salary. And I got to do some really neat things there. Actually, we did free home delivery back in the late 90s, early 2000s when they started doing that stuff.
Wow, that's cool.
But he also gave me the latitude to kind of build my own kind of entrepreneurial things. So we built an association, an affinity buying program, probably about the same time Zag came about, but we had our own tool. I built my first lead scoring tool actually while I was there. And then after some sort of personnel issues and stuff like that, I got recruited to work for a business incubator in Austin, Texas. So I commuted back and forth, helped launch the pilot for AutoNation Direct. Then we repackaged that for the international market. Then I went on to revisit lead scoring, except using their PhD brainiacs. And once that got spun off into an OEM-facing tool as opposed to a dealer-facing tool, I decided to go work with Joe Webb and the consulting side of things. What really prompted that was that we had this really amazing technology, really an awesome tool, but people weren't using it, and I just didn't feel like it was my place to say, hey, I did this for years all over the country. I've sold cars in 19 different states and this is how you should do it. I just never felt like that was my part. But I also knew that, we were getting, 5, 6, 7% higher closing ratios in those dealerships who were actually using the tool versus those who are not. They were just satisfied for about double, but we were almost getting triple the closing ratios. This is using ex-urban third-party leads, your auto vitals, not in the awesome zip codes. They kind of put some big barriers on us to make this thing work. And so very proud of that stuff. But at the same time, I understand so much more about the business now in terms of how dealers work and how different markets work, and kind of understanding that, hey, the buck stops at the person selling the car.
And it's cool.
Franchise laws.
That's very true. And it's so cool, to get this opportunity to jam with you because, your understanding of technology, your understanding of the dealer operations. I'll be honest with you, it's kind of rare. There are a lot of technology companies out there that have put out some pretty impressive products. But there are a lot of them out there that never even sold a car in their lives.
Mhm.
And yet they're trying to kind of fill, these shoes and help these people with their livelihoods. And they just don't ever really kind of seem to be in the thick of it. And you're the total opposite. You've been there. You've done it. Well, it's cool. I mean, it's similar to kind of how I am. I approach marketing from an operations perspective, understand what that salesperson has to go through and what that sales manager has to go through. And you do the same on the technology side. You're able to kind of look at it and understand who that end user is going to be and how is this going to positively affect them. So you've been with Joe. How is it with Joe? Come on, tell me the truth. He's not in the room.
We're celebrated 9 years in June. And we had a nice glass of champagne. No, we didn't.
Yeah, did you go to a little anniversary, a little manversary?
No, but like I said, it's coming up on a decade. I got to know Joe while he was still in retail. And the funny thing is I see these people different places and like, I met you in retail. And so we actually were friends long before we started working together, and probably a good solid 3 years or so. And then the time came, his business was growing and I was looking to make a change. It just sort of worked out great and I haven't looked back.
It's so funny when I think of the two of you guys' personalities and also just the two of you standing side by side too, right? I mean, Joe casts as a shadow, both figuratively and literally, right?
That's for most people, not just me or you or anybody else, but
it's pretty much everybody. It's pretty much everybody, Yeah. So I'm just curious, and we're gonna get into our conversation. But I'm just kind of curious, how is the dynamic of, working with Joe, and you have this very tech savvy mind, this very boom, 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 and then Joe's just got this great thirst for, helping others and just bring some serious passion to our industry.
No, it's really strange because we do think a lot alike.
Yeah.
And in a lot of times we'll catch ourselves saying pretty much the exact same thing. But we definitely approach things a little bit differently. I think he's definitely got the passion. He has the love for working with people, working at the dealerships, getting his hands dirty. Where I'm a little more analytical, I scratch my head sometimes and maybe punch the wall a little bit. I get frustrated because there's a lot of things that don't make sense. But we definitely fuel each other, for sure. And, I try to have his personality, but I can't, so I got to be myself.
It's okay. Nobody
really hard. but we definitely make it work. And like I said, we certainly help each other out in terms of things we don't have and the resources we lack. So it's a very good partnership. And I think a lot of people have benefited. We've worked all over North America, hundreds of cities, thousands of BD agents now. And you've been in this business longer than I have. You know how hard it is, I think, to be a consultant and be a trainer. And, and we've done that. We've had to diversify at the same time though. So, our software that we developed actually is about half our revenue now.
Oh, wow.
So we definitely do a lot with that. But to your point though, it's sort of informed by the work we're doing with people every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It helps us make our technology better. And, we're in the accountability business either way, so we can't clone ourselves. I've tried, It failed miserably. It's really hot.
So you're the tech guy. You can figure this part out, right?
but we had to actually develop our own software just to keep the CRMs accountable because there's so much variation and stuff there. So we're really big on that, but that helps us understand that trajectory the dealership's going to be on. And it helps us sort of keep ourselves in check. If something's not right, the percentages are off, what are we doing wrong? So it definitely works both ways.
And I love the fact that you guys are just so much in the thick of it. I mean, every move you guys make is not necessarily a feeling or I think it is really, really kind of data driven. So, you guys are seeing some fundamental changes that are going on right now. And you can definitely see where some of those changes are heading over the next 5 years. I'm just curious, what are you seeing out there right now?
Well, I think you always have your unicorns. I think we've always hear about the dealership closing at 20% or, whatever. I mean, it's some kind of quadratic equation they use to get to those numbers. But I always feel like there's like sort of that first tier, tip of the spear type group of dealerships. Then there's sort of the mid-level stores that, we tend to work with, kind of the smaller regional groups and things of that nature where human resources are an issue. Budget to, get a lot of these neat things because there's always a balance in terms of what they're able to do, how much money you can spend on advertising. So, there's kind of this bandwidth in the middle of dealerships who, want to make a difference. They want to move the needle, but, they're not quite there with the big guys. They're not getting the kickbacks from the OEMs, or they're not meeting their objectives with the OEMs consistently. The co-op stuff isn't exactly agree with them very much. And so
we can do a whole podcast just on that.
We could totally do at least a podcast, if not
I got
two.
some 4-letter words to use for that 4-letter acronym.
Me too. But I think that's the struggle that we're in right now. I think is I think we have some unreasonable expectations, if I can say it without stuttering.
Yes.
Unreasonable expectations in terms of targets. I think we have the co-op thing has really handcuffed a lot of stores. I was just actually had met with some guys in Detroit last night in the business, and we were kind of talking about what happened with Cadillac and the Pinnacle. I'm not sure if that happened up in Ontario or throughout Canada, but in the US they're required to have discrete websites and all this other stuff. And now since Denishan left GM, it's like poof, it goes away. You know, it's just one person's whim. And all these dealerships had to commit thousands and thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars to.
As I say, some of them probably were definitely that high for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just sunk cost. So,
so with that always kind of being a battle, right? And it is. It's a bit of a battle. You know, it's I would say some manufacturers are better than others.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. But there is always consistently being a battle of the manufacturers needing to move metal and the dealerships actually needing to make money. And, you know, there always kind of seems to be a line and a balance there. And, you know, I agree. I definitely agree with you. I think I kind of see, you know, visiting hundreds and hundreds of dealerships across the nation, you know, is that I would break it down into 3 buckets as well. Right. I mean, I think there are people that are literally drowning. You know, they just, their people and their processes and their measurable efforts can't seem to connect at all, you know. And then I think there's probably the very large chunk of dealerships that are kind of treading water. And I would say there's probably different levels there. But at least I would say at that level that, you know, people are understanding that it's, you know, people plus process. So I at least need to invest in my people. I need to at least invest into my process so they're able to kind of tread along. And then I agree with you. There are some unicorns out there and, you know, that will really kind of understand the people plus the process and the measurable efforts and how we can kind of all tie it together and glue it together with this crazy thing called culture. And they almost seem to be completely resistant to any, you know, environmental industry changes because they just seem to create these bubbles. I mean, honestly, I probably know about maybe that many unicorns. And I don't know if you probably know many more than that, you know?
Yeah. Well,
but, you know,
Canada's a little bit different though, because you have the bigger groups, you know, and I think in a lot of ways you guys are a little bit further ahead in that respect because, you know, let's face it, the margins just aren't there. I mean, you look at the NADA data, you're, you know, on a good year, 2.6%, bad year, 2.3%. I mean, it's 2+%, you know, where the software business, I mean, hell, we were lopping off businesses at 85% margin. That's just, you know, we're cutting the stone till it bleeds, you know, and you know, it's a lot different in that respect. But you know, it doesn't take a lot for those smaller dealerships to fall apart. When you have 100 stores in your portfolio, that 2% or 3%, it's a lot of money at that point, you know? So you have the resources to, you know, not only invest in your people, but invest in that training or invest in the technology, but you also have, you know, time to actually recruit the right people. You know, when you talk about culture, it's
true.
I don't think there's a lot of people who really understand what that means. They might get the Diet Coke version from the forums and stuff in our little echo
Disney
chamber.
World version of it. Yep.
But I think in terms of that, like, you know, when you ask a dealership, you know, what's your culture like? And they're like, oh yeah, we're family owned and operated. And they kind of go in that same kind of branding
direction.
Low, but they're bringing it whatever. And it's like, well, that's like all dealerships, right? Like your handshake is 90.6 degrees, like everyone else is pretty much. So, you know, what makes you different? And I think that's where that differentiation happens, especially with the publicly traded groups that have access to that level of talent, and they can bring in, you know, very educated people and have actual managers with leadership capabilities, not just like the best salesperson there.
No, it's very true. So I am beginning to see kind of some fundamental shift, right? You know, I think for all intents and purposes for this podcast, that bottom chunk of people that are drowning, we're not going to talk to them today.
Okay.
Because honestly, for us to spend the time just for them to convince them that they need to embrace their people in the process, we'll just let them figure that out themselves. And maybe rightfully so, they should be drowning, you know, and let someone else kind of pick it up. Right. But I think for the bigger chunk of all the dealerships out there that do have some fundamental understanding that it is people and process that continue to push them along and make things easier. What do you see happening, over the next few years? I'm just thinking advice wise that we can give to those dealerships to say, hey, look, we understand you're treading water here, but if you start kind of moving some of your efforts, because at the end of the day, we only have so many efforts to go around in these particular directions, you'll get to a point where you're not only just treading water, but you're cruising along at some of those unicorns we talked about.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
That's a great bit of advice, and that could go a lot of different directions. First thing, tighten your belt, because
Good point.
we could be heading up on a big dip here, but I think that's sort of the news du jour. But one of the things that I feel like, and especially working with so many people over the years now, and just seeing the turnover that's out there, I really think the best people are probably working at your dealership right now. If you're on, and it's not an indictment against a generation or anything. It's just a matter of, I think the hunger for commission and those sort of scraps that get thrown, various things and things of that nature. Like, I don't think that younger people really react to those spiffs the way they used to when I went, you and I were coming up in the business.
Yep.
So somebody's like, hey, it's an extra 20. That's $20. It's, because again, we, back when we came up, our cell phone bill wasn't $200 a month.
Sure.
There's a lot of things have changed significantly over that period of time, behaviorally and just understanding wise. And one of the things I was talking about last night is that, and I brought this up in a 20 group, I'm like, there are no more baby boomers being born. It's like this notion of like, people need to work harder, and they need to be like Jane over there. She's been here for 35 years and, she eats nails and glass for breakfast. And, that group of the population is aging out.
Yes.
And so part of it will have to be is accommodating what you have left, and really understanding like what other motivations are out there, what other motivators are available for those types of people. Because having 100% turnover in your BDC, it's costing you all kinds of money in hiring, firing costs. I want to say I did the math on it last year. I want to say it's like about a $19 billion problem across the industry when you factor in lost revenue from those sales. And of course that amortize that over all the different dealerships. That's still millions of dollars that are lost. And I've asked dealerships, like, what are your hiring and firing costs for a year? And like, oh my God, you don't want to know. That's normally what it is. It's like,
I'm surprised some of them even know in the first place, to be honest with you. I think a lot of dealerships I sat down and talked to wouldn't even have a number they could come up with as far as understanding what the hiring and firing is. You made a good point though, is understanding what motivates this next generation, or the generation of people that are currently working at the dealership right now. Because to your point, I agree. It's not the spiffs. And boy, I used to love my spiffs. I had those things nailed down. I knew what I had to do on a Saturday to get that extra beer money. I knew what I had to do, when it came month end. It was like, I hate to say it, but even as a salesperson, I'd sandbag a little bit. I knew the spiffs got bigger towards the end of the month. Like, okay, I can sell them now, but if I sell them 4 days from now, I know they're going to launch. So things have changed a lot. So what would you say some of those motivators should be for dealerships to really kind of get that next generation, embracing this industry?
Well, the number one thing I hear, I think it's some permutation of time, whether it's more time off or breaks or shorter hours. And in fact, it's sort of, one of the things I learned a long time ago is, just because you're sitting in front of your computer doesn't mean you're productive. I've been to, my dealership, of course, the years I spent there, and the dozens of people I saw come and go certainly weren't busting their ass every minute of their day. Lots of smoke breaks. I can tell you that. That was going on back then. And, but even today, like, I look at the CRM data and I can see the activity levels that take place. And, if you're just going LM between 9 and 9:12 in the morning on all your future calls, what are you doing the rest of the day? And I would have to double check the next up data. Brent would be a better person at. I don't want to say it's something like 5 hours of wasted time a day or something like that.
I can guarantee you easily.
Some extraordinary amount of time. So, I think we have to accept the fact that, we're not going to be productive all that time. So I think encouraging people to, once they do their critical tasks, to, take a lunch break, or go home for a bit, and, just chill out a little bit. Cause I think it's a cumulative effect that I see happen over and over again when people are stressed out and they're just a little more stressed out and they're a little more stressed out. And then all of a sudden they they blow up, and,
Sure.
and you've seen it. I've seen it. I know a lot of your viewers have seen it happen before. And I'm literally months away from being able to calculate that in a predictive way of like how much time that you need to do all your stuff, because it's that important to me. Because I've seen a lot of good talent leave, because of that they don't have enough time for their kids. They're missing too many things. Their spouse is getting frustrated because they're never home. And I don't know about you, but like there's a lot of nights where I didn't roll in until 7:30, 8 o'clock, because after 6 o'clock, calling people back, like that was money time, right? Like, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm out. I'm gonna take a break, get lunch, do something, because I've already got everything done. My deliveries are already scheduled, everything's clean, all my stuff's done, my stuff's in finance. Like, I want to do something else, and that I think that's what
there should be something else for the dealerships to do. I mean, that's what I kind of see as being one of those core issues, right? I just had a dealership recently change their schedule, and I'm gonna track this and watch it and see how it goes. But I actually kind of dig this. It is 4 full bell-to-bell shifts and 3 days off.
Wow.
4 days on, 3 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off. Now they've implemented it in their 3rd month so far, and they seem to be very happy with the performance. Just so you guys know, they're still selling cars. And they're still getting them delivered. Of course, there had to be some significant process changes, to accommodate some of that. But as far as overall staff, they're getting happier. But, then it kind of came down to, as they started this, definitely I would say people's happiness was obviously there. They knew that they could really work their asses off and then take a 3-day break, a legitimate 3-day break, But the question is that, again, to your point, they're working a bell-to-bell shift. In this case, it's 9 to 9. So they're working a full 12-hour shift. Yeah. All right. 9 to 9, there's a lot of downtime there. So, what this dealership has gone through is really start to identify what are these people's job descriptions. And does the job description really fulfill, the amount of time that are being spent at the dealership. So now they're embarking that. They're 3 months into this program, and now they're taking a look at the job description and seeing, how much more we can do. So what would you recommend with that downtime that we should be getting our team to really, spend some time and effort on?
Yeah, I think there's, a few different answers there. I look at the tech sector, with like 80-20 time, sort of what they call it. But, you look at that 20% of your day doing other things that you're passionate about. And I mean, man, think of all the people we know over the years, the dealership, who've came up with cool things or got into marketing or got into YouTube and started shooting videos. But like, giving people the time to do that and the resources and the latitude and the freedom to do that, where it's not like, okay, hey, I know you're supposed to be shooting YouTube videos right now, but we're moving cars. So I need you to come over here, take the keys, get, over there, those Camrys. Yep. Need to line the, how many times does that happen? So, institutionalizing that 80-20 time. And, Google is a bad example because they're a huge company, but I'll use them anyway, because like a lot of the initiatives that they did, and especially in Google X stuff, like that's 80-20 time. And I think just encouraging people to do that, or even learn new skills, take a module online, learn, even sit through and watch like a video like this, like this should technically be work because you're learning.
Yeah, they should totally be watching this podcast. And in fact, we should email this out. This is work. Everybody out there is watching. You should totally be telling all of your staff and managers to be watching this while they're at work. No. But what I'm finding, though, is the key to doing that is being intentful with our time.
Yeah.
To your point, because I've heard this before many times, right? It's like, all of a sudden the manager jumps up out of their desk. Nothing's really going on. Let's go rearrange the entire lot.
Yeah.
But I was always kind of surprised. Like, why does it have to, why can we not have it scheduled? Why can I not know that every Thursday at 1:17 p.m., all right, the team is meeting in the lunchroom and we're going out to rearrange the lot? It just seems like we're talking about being one of those motivators, right? A structure to me, it's time. Time is a big motivator, but I also find with this next generation of salespeople that are coming in is that they're looking for structure.
Yeah.
Like they actually want to know when they come in that here are the boom, 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 things they need to accomplish today.
Mhm.
And when dealerships don't seem to give them that structure, their minds and things just kind of go this way and that way. And, they're the ones that seem to be looking for somewhere else to work in the next 6 to 9 months.
Well, it gets disheartening is all get
Mhm.
out. I mean, it really does. Like I remember back in the day, and I live in Michigan, you live in Ontario, same, we get the same weather, and like there'd be days you're 15 minutes late for work because there's several feet of snow or a meter of snow on the ground or whatever, and like get there and it's like, okay, we're shoveling a lot, get your hat on, and it's like I got 12 leads I got to respond back to. Well, they'll still be there, like everybody, all hands on deck, and that happened to me countless times.
Yeah.
And so for those instances, like you're kind of SOL because you have to go out there and help, because then you're like special prima donna or whatever. And so for a lot of dealerships, there's that cultural issue. And I it's almost like a boot camp, slash, fraternity hazing type environment though. We're going back to culture, but that's also part of it, is that structure falls apart. There's no way I could count the amount of times where these commitments have been made just to fall apart to do things like you're talking about. Where a weekend,
it's just being reactive.
Yeah, and it reactivates. Things are slow. Yeah. Screw the process. We're going to redo it. Make 6 phone calls every day for the next 3 days. Otherwise you're fired. And it happens all the time. And we've been to some really good dealerships over the years where these things have popped up all of a sudden. They get a new general sales manager or something like that. Wheels completely come off the cart.
Yes.
Sometimes it goes back. Sometimes it goes the other direction. And it's a really tough thing that people have to go through, especially if they're new to the business or they're only snowflake millennials or what people want to say. But to your point though, I mean, there's a lot of structure that's lacking, and there's not a lot of job descriptions, and there's not a lot of paths to leadership. So there's a whole bunch of different things that are just sort of nebulous that people don't know how to navigate.
Well, and you know what, paths to leadership, I think, was another one, right? So, so far, we've talked about time and, time management, they need it, they want it, right? They want to know what they're doing with their time, right? And what can they do with their time, that's still going to be productive and okay for the company. But I think the next one, to your point, is actually a path, right? Like no one comes in and says, I'm just going to be a salesperson. They have a specific goal and objective in mind. They want to do something, right? So it's like, I just don't see a lot of dealerships that will sit down with their staff and really try to understand what their personal development goals are. It's like, okay, you want to be an F&I manager. Cool. The guy's second week on the job and he wants to be an F&I manager. I know that sounds a little crazy, but we should at least be able to have the conversation, map out what it's going to take for this guy to become or gal to become an F&I manager. So then there is an actual path for someone to take.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
First off, okay, amen. Okay, but
Woohoo!
yeah, but I think it comes back to that sort of, this is the way it's always been. I mean, I gotta tell you that having one of the kids take over the business is alive and well. That's a good thing and a bad thing. But there's for some people that pathway to success maybe is blocked by Junior, who's going to Northwood or whatever and finishing up his his studies there to be the next dealer. And that's one of those things. It's almost a stereotype to a degree. It's happened so often. But I think on the other side of that coin is the fact that a lot of these people just don't understand that stuff. They don't sit down and think about, okay, hey, X number of hours in the BDC, when you're proficient on the phones, you're proficient with emails, it doesn't look like the cat ran across the keyboard and you're sending something out, then you're a salesperson for 2 years. And if you reach a consistent 15 cars a month and your CSI score doesn't dip below 95, then you can be an apprentice, whatever, for F&I, like
into a training program, Yeah. So I think what it is again, it's just us being reactive. It's just like we don't seem to want to take the time to, identify what those job descriptions are going to be, to identify, schedule something out. Look, I know the only way I'm going to lose these 20 pounds. All right, fine, 30. Is that I set myself a routine and a schedule so that I actually make sure I go do these things. And, and using that same analogy, I know what activities I need to do to get to the point where I can lose those 20 or 30 pounds. But we don't ever seem to do that with our team. But here's the difference I see in that group of dealerships that are treading water and the ones that are on top and seem to be just not affected, by market changes or environmental changes. They just don't seem to be affected by it because they seem to really embrace and understand that personal development and how important it is for each person. What would you say, what advice would you give to a dealership that may be sitting here shaking their heads up and down as we're talking? Oh, yeah, that sounds good. What would you say some of the first steps would be?
Pick one thing. That's the big issue that I see, is that too much tries to get it done at the same time. I mean, listen, sample set of one. I mean, I'm a trainer, so I'm working with dealerships who first recognize they have a problem, right? It's one of the things, I brought Brent before, but when he talked about like the 12-step program and how it applies to things, and it really resonated with me just because a lot of people don't want to admit they have a problem like this,
Good point.
I'm not equating this to alcoholism, but I kind of am at the same time. But you have to admit that it's an issue. Like, okay, hey, my turnover is 75% on the showroom floor. It never was that high. My GMs are turning over at 65, 70%. And that was like a 15% thing, years ago. We have to first admit there's a problem. And then the second part, and you have to do both these things. So you have to want to do something to fix it. And I think for a lot of dealerships, they're unfortunately content going like, yeah, I know we suck. Our CSI sucks. We're not getting our IMR this month because we suck. But you know what? We're going to suck forever because we're in the Rust Belt and blah, 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 blah. And they go read a Grant Cardone book and hope that's going to put a Band-Aid on things. And that's the sort of the pathway to like not getting anything done because they get introspective. They read these things. They go maybe watch a podcast or two, or they read a blog or two, and like, I need to do all these things. We need to completely reshuffle the deck on our marketing. We need to fire our agencies. We need a new CRM. And they do it all at one time. And so, as a person who literally is charged with analyzing these things and how they are growing or shrinking, like I go, man, like if you just picked one thing, if you go, let's just work on customer experience, maybe that's it. Maybe our CSI is low. Maybe, we want to do that. Maybe we just focus on that one thing and make sure we get that to the point where we feel pretty proud of what that is, and then maybe do something else. And I think it's always goes back to that, eat the elephant one bite at a time. You got to figure out what piece to eat, but just pick one piece and work on it. Figure out something that you can accomplish with the resources you have that doesn't require you to go out and get a new piece of technology, hire a bunch of new people, or these things. Look at what resources you have available and go, hey, what can we change? And build on that momentum.
No, I agree. And I think I see a lot of people almost want to go out there and just blow it up. Let's light a match.
You hear it all the time.
Let's just, in fact, actually, I had a dealership the other day. They told me that's what they were going to do. Like they literally turned everything off. Like spending freeze across the board. I'm not going to do any marketing. I'm getting rid of my CRM system. I'm getting rid of this. I'm going to get rid of everything. And I'm just going to magically try to rebuild this. But, to your point, I think we have amazing resources, but we don't ever seem to want to really kind of dedicate the time necessary. And it's time. It comes back to time again, right? Yeah. The things we're talking about here is not necessarily going to cost you some dollars as much as it's going to really require you to be intentful with your time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it comes down to, you're right, it comes down to those two magical places, it's people or process. Which one, right? Yeah. And, here's what I recommend to dealerships to do is to really set up a space that's dedicated to doing this. When I think of this as like, when I want to lose those 20 or 30 pounds, what do? I go to the gym. I go to a place that's dedicated for me to be able to get that done, right? Instead, what I see is I see dealerships try to have these conversations while they're in the sales manager's office, right, and there's two guys standing outside. One needs an appraisal. The other one needs, they're trying to have this very legitimate conversation about how they're going to start being, how they're going to start planning things out instead of being reactive. And it's like, right. So it's like, I would say, we have to take one thing step at a time, but really set yourself a space. If it has to be offsite, be offsite. I'm a big fan. I don't know if you are, but I'm a huge fan of taking people offsite.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, there's a corollary to that though, too. And I think it's sort of understanding like when the best time to do these activities are. Mm-hmm. And I remember back in the day when I was in retail, and I don't know if you had the privilege of having a trainer come in or whatever, but it always was like on like the last day of July or something like that. Like, hey, we're going to have you, the peak of the busyness of the year, pretty much. Let's do
Yep.
training now. So that's the other thing too, is sometimes it's sort of sabotaged, so a lot of what I try to do with our stores is, let them know, like, hey, like, look at your year over year, for instance. Like, I'm trying to understand, like, where you're going to be based on where you were that exact same time, because then that sort of frees you up to sort of understand what you can expect, but also kind of gives you an idea of, like, when you're going to be busy or not, right? So, in my mind, and I knew this a long time ago, and I still study it today, you can see these cycles that happen all the time. And I just think of these situations, like, we're getting a new serum in August. It's like, why? It's when all your sales are going on. Like, your OEM spent $6 billion this month on advertising or whatever, and or maybe not that much, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's true.
Peak selling season. I just was talking when my buddy's out in Alberta, it's snowing there. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to buy in a car and there's, a meter of snow on the ground, right? Or 3 feet of snow on the ground. Like that, your window of opportunities during those peak selling times. So, like, just having that intent and being mindful of that is a big deal. Like, I always say, like, if you're going to push the plunger on the detonator, do it in February, where it's dead. I don't care where you're at, like, so you pick those right times. And because I feel like, especially like those 1-day training courses and stuff like that, you're not paying attention. I always think about how I was during that time period. I'm like, staring at my phone and watching my chat window pop up. And I was just waiting for customer activity to take place. I wasn't learning.
You know what, though? I also see, like, the way dealerships use training, I think, is always has been consistently incorrect, right? Either they'll admit it or they won't admit it, but they expect you as a trainer to come in and relight that fire in each of their guys' belly. And they seem to think that happens through training. And maybe some portion of training is kind of that motivational element where it's just like, hey, look, guys, like, if you're able to achieve these activities, look, here are the results that are going to happen. But you know how it is, that works for about 3 or 4 days, maybe a week or so. And then they're just really right back to where those activities are. But if we sit down, and I think if we spend more time on that personal development, so I keep going back to that personal development portion. And I think if any dealerships are going to spend time, if they're going to spend one place, this is where I probably go with it, is if they're going to spend time in one place to really sit down and understand why these people actually show up. Is it just to collect a paycheck? Okay, but there's probably something deeper in that, right? Their kids are getting older. One of them need braces. The other one's going to be going to college. I don't know, whatever it is, right? But truly understanding that and helping them develop out both a personal and financial, map to get to their goals and objectives. Ultimately, what ends up happening is we get to our goals and objectives. So it's like, as dealerships, we all want to hit our own goals and objectives, and we're expecting our people to get us there, but then we don't spend any time understanding what their goals and objectives are.
Yeah, I mean, it's all that and other variables as well. And I think to sort of counter your offsite, it's great, but you got to cram all that stuff in at once.
Good point.
And, I want to go back to one of the things you said in the very beginning of, like, a lot of people haven't been involved in retail, or if they have, it's been sort of in a cursory or like a tangential way. I always think back, and Joe is the same way, and the people we have working for us, we're all sort of informed by our past, and you go, man, like, how much can you actually retain in those days? So that's why with our training, we've done this for years. We just break into like an hour a week, and that way we can work on those behaviors. And again, in a small way, we're not trying to twist all the knobs at once. We're trying to work on those things like time management, or work on the right process, or when to send the right thing, or when to hand off to a manager. It takes a minimum of 21 days to build a new habit. I mean, I just read this research, and actually it's closer to 66 days, depending on the habit, sounds like you're trying to lose some weight. So, but I mean, like, it doesn't happen overnight. And so you need that constant reinforcement. You need that accountability, and we can't have a new metric. We can't have a new process. We can't change things up all the time if we want to make that lasting change. And so, we're very selective of the stores we work with. And I think the time we've been doing this affords us the opportunity to do that. But we have to have those dealerships realize this isn't going to happen overnight. And no matter how much money you pay me or pay anybody else, they charge a shitload more than we do, or even a metric shitload more than we do. Okay. You're not gonna get that immediate change. And you might get that one person that might get lit up and might get that fire, but there's no amount of tapes, merchandise, streaming, subliminal messages. They're going to make that lasting change. And so, a lot of what we believe in is behavior modification. That's what we train, is we try to get people to build better habits, and that way it lasts. And so if we do need to make changes, now we have a nice little lattice work to build on top of, to whereas, okay, well, the foundation's still there. We're just going to change this. We're going to paint this white. We're not going to completely bulldoze things. We're going to, work with what we know that works well for us and add to it. And I think that's where we've seen that lasting results. And to your point, I mean, I feel like our dealerships are able to navigate those ebbs and flows that come naturally. But they're all informed and they understand everything. I mean, this is long for a lot of people. I'm sure they're like, us guys don't shut up, but I believe like you have to understand all those different dimensions. I was the type of person growing up like, hey, because I told you to, I told you to do it. I was like, no, but why? But once I understood why, then I was like, okay, great, I can do that. So we got to, approach this in a way that's multidimensional and helps people learn. And sometimes it takes repetition. Sometimes it takes seeing a video. Sometimes it takes live role playing. Sometimes so we have to approach all those different things. So, the second thing I would add to, picking one thing would be then let's build out a pathway to success. Let's understand a time frame. Let's figure out a way to measure this so that we know that we're on a positive trajectory. And that's how we can build those lasting changes.
No, for sure. And for dealerships to really kind of embrace it, they have to understand that this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. I know there's so many other parts of our business that feel like they're sprints. It's a sprint from the beginning to the end of the month. And it's a sprint from the beginning of the quarter to the end of the quarter. And it's a sprint from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And it's just like, but it's not. This is, taking this time, it is a marathon, and you have to be willing to put in the commitment for those future results. And sometimes these results are not going to be immediate. You're going to, you'll get a pop, probably right out of the gate, but this is something that takes time. It's a marathon.
Yeah. And that's why we're very conscientious of the metrics and stuff like that. We try to look at those year-over-year metrics because we want to try to look at things as close as possible. And so, I've seen a lot of instances where, hey, XYZ training company starts in January and they get amazing results in March, type of thing. Well, it's because everybody has amazing results in March because, it's people are driving through snow, right? So, those things happen, or, you start from nothing and you get like a 300% improvement. That happens a lot. But we're pretty meticulous about that because we want to build something realistic. And another thing is, I would say kind of, I guess, part 3 of this would be like, give yourself realistic goals. And this is one of the things where the OEM, especially now that dealerships make all their money from the OEM reimbursements now, let's be honest. And the NADA suggests that they're pretty much fully subsidized by the OEM these days. A lot of the targets and stuff that are given are just, I swear to God, they're just pulled out of your vest pocket and like, okay, this is it. It's like, we've never
I think it's like a wheel. I think it's just a wheel. That's what it is. It's like a random wheel. Let's just spin the wheel and see what their target's going to be this month. Okay.
Yeah. And it almost feels that arbitrary because I remember one of my stores, Buick dealership in the Northeast, and they're like, this is our goal that Buick gave us. And they're Buick GMC dealership. I mean, have you ever sold that many Buicks ever in any month at any time? No, we never have. I'm like, where did they come from? Guys, no, and so, but that was their goal. And of course they, unceremoniously blew it because it was not an achievable goal. And I don't think that that's going to make things easier for anyone. It's not going to help people get motivated when you see something like that's not possible. And then it's a demotivator at that point. And that's one of the things where I've been very loud about the metrics and stuff like that, because a lot of these numbers that get thrown about, there are no standards for how those things are measured, so I can take, the same ruler you have and I can grab a meter stick and it's exactly 1 meter where I'm at and where you're at. And in Cambodia and in South America, it's going to be the same place. Doesn't matter where it's at. There might be some humidity differences that might make but I mean, but there's that, that meter is everywhere, pints a pound a world around. It's the same thing. And we don't have that with like closing ratios or website conversions. I always love hearing these website conversion numbers and stuff.
Oh God, don't even get me started.
Right. So, I mean, but it happens to both of us.
Yep.
And so one of the things, we institute is benchmarking. We, in all the technology we work with and all the technical partners that we're worked with over the years in terms of just consulting different tech companies, like give your people some benchmarks, let them know what's
real ones, not ones that are just kind of randomly grabbed out of the air and say,
exactly.
Okay, here it is. Right. But
right.
I mean, that is the downside with data. I mean, and this is where I think a lot of dealerships will get concerned when the word data starts getting talked around in the dealership. I think that trust level or not trusting the data comes from this place that, I mean, look, let's admit it. We can make data say whatever we want it to say. Whatever I want it to say, I can find some type of benchmark or KPI that's going to, show my story, whatever story I'm trying to depict, right? But it comes down to that. If we don't have that data, I mean, if we're understanding that people and processes are the key to our success, right? If we don't have measurable efforts on our people and our processes, then how in the hell are we ever going to get better, right?
Yeah.
So one time I'm empathetic with dealerships. On one hand, I'm empathetic with dealerships because I understand the fear that comes from it, because there's a lot of vendors, there's a lot of agencies out there that will and do it on a regular basis. Yeah. Some of these are really big companies. We're not talking
vampires.
Yes, there is. But at the same time, we also we have to embrace it.
Well, it definitely keeps me in the business, because, I'm just like anybody else. Like, I should just go to pharmaceuticals and, make twice what I make now. Right. But then I look and just see how just broken, jagged things are. And it's really not getting any better. Since I started doing this, it really hasn't gotten that much better. Yeah. And it's a shame, that, and there are lead providers out there they'll sell you leads. There's no intent to purchase. And you still got people out there saying, hey, all leads are created equal. And you still got to call everybody, once a day for 30 days. And you have all these things out there. And for that one unicorn, it works. There's always an instance with, how many dealerships are there across the continent? 20,000, 25,000. I mean, there's
something like that. Yeah.
Something like that, So like, in one or two instances, it's right, but for the other, the dealerships like we're talking about in the middle, like they don't know where to like put their target. They're like, okay, well, this dealership's doing this and their sites are converting at 28% because I saw them at my 20 group and their rep was in there from their blah, blah, blah company and their leads are closing at 30%. And they start throwing all these numbers out there. And like, well, when I'm there, I'm like, well, how'd you get there? Well, I don't know, or it's in your CRM. Like, well, I know your CRM very well. And it'll give you 3 different closing ratios. So which report are you using? So there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And so I think that's, part of why things don't move is because you don't know what to believe or who to believe. And there's nothing, and so like, I don't want this to be like, this is a negative episode, but it's the frustrating thing for me. And so,
I deal with all the time. I think dealers are frustrated as well. I think that there's definitely a lot of people that are listening or watching to this and they're shaking their heads and they're agreeing with us. Speaking of 20 groups, I'm beginning to see a shift in what these 20 groups are. And I always appreciated, what the intent was out of the gate, but now it's kind of gotten to the point now where I think dealers just need a bit more, right? Just knowing that your neighbor down the street sells or grosses more per service customer than you do doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help you create a better process. People have to understand that, there's one bucket, which is personal development people, and then there's a bucket that are processes. And just because a process is working well at a dealership does not necessarily mean that same process is going to work well at your dealership, because you may not have that people element, right? Yeah,
and there's a lot of other variables involved there, but I see this a lot, and we've had to clean up a lot of messes over the years from other quote unquote experts. And we've had some people
gotta love those guys,
full blown like Stockholm syndrome over like, well, I got to do this. Well, it's like, no, you don't. Like, where did that even come from? And so, but I mean, to add on to that people and process issues, that really should be the bedrock of your dealership. I mean, you should have, that should be like the one static thing that never changes, right? Like your control group. And so I feel like you have to have a process that's tuned to your market, tuned to your dealership, tuned to your people, what's feasible, what's going to get done, what technology is going to be used, like used, not paid for, but used. There's a lot of, kind of little sub pieces in there, but if you have a good recipe there and they're consistent, I want to go back to like the metric thing here, but like, as long as you're measuring everything the exact same way and it's consistent, if it's always a 6% closing ratio every single month measured the exact same way, well, that's consistent. Now we can start to add some things onto it, because I imagine it's sort of like gears in a transmission. You still have the same final gear ratio turning your wheels, but you're changing some of their gears in there to get different things happening there. And I think unless that rear axle ratio stays the same, the results are going to be all over the place when you start changing things. And so I think a lot of it is just making sure that that's consistent. You have a consistency. And I think that consistency starts to build that culture. It starts to build that expectation. This is, and we were just talking about hockey before I think we went live, but there's a certain culture that happens with certain organizations over time. Like this, they're fast, always fast, or they're very, defensively punishing, or they're just lights out with, snipers all over the ice. But that's sort of the culture of that team. But that takes time.
And they're consistent. That, to your point, they're consistent with it, right?
Right. But then they're recruiting that talent at the same time, and they're building that talent in their other organizations. So, it really sort of ties in all the things we're talking about here is once you really understand what that formula is, then you build on top of it. And that's when you can start to add those new things and really building that culture of learning and training and getting people excited. And I'll tell you, man, it happens. That's the coolest thing for me as a trainer is
you get to see
this.
Yep.
People who are like this for the first, couple weeks. And then they're coming to you like, Bill, I have these questions for you. This customer just laid this on me, That's when I see that change from, shoulders, up to shoulders down, head forward, wanting to learn because they made that commitment and they realize that, okay, somebody's here to help me out. Somebody's here to educate me. I'm interested in that. I'm excited about it because it makes my results better. And, that takes time to build as well. It takes, part of that cultural change and part of that behavior shift is getting that desire to learn and a desire to adapt and change and understanding this business is going a million different directions all the time, depending on the time of year and what incentives are going on. You mentioned that 30-day cycle and things of that nature, but once you sort of understand that this is all part of it and that's part of your training and it's part of what you do every day, then it's not scary anymore. Now you want to show up. Now you do want to put in more than 40 hours a week sometimes.
Well, so that's kind of going back to what we were talking about with the marathon, right? How you run a marathon, you find your stride. You find that place where you're comfortable and continuing to move forward, and you consistently hit that space and you maintain that through the entire time. And I think as an industry, or definitely as individual dealerships, if we can embrace that marathon concept and become consistent in our efforts and our people and our processes, the results are very clear. You get to see it. I get to see it. The cool thing, it's very black and white. It'll actually show up on a P&L statement. You'll actually be able to see those. You'll see it. You'll see it when that consistency kicked in and the commitment to it over a period of time. You'll see that consistent growth. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. I definitely think we're going to have to do this again because we touched on a couple subjects, and I would love to deep dive even more with you. But for everybody out there that's listening or watching right now and love to learn more about what you and Joe are up to, what is the best way to connect with you?
Our website, dealerknows.com. We blog all the time. We do at least 3 or 4 different pieces a month, minimum, so there's always lots of good, fresh content that kind of covers a lot of these newer things. We got a bunch of funny videos. That's kind of the gateway drug for Dealer Knows is going to, so if you go to YouTube and you search Dealer Knows, you'll see a bunch of our funny videos, and a lot of them for the dealers who've never seen them. It's really based on kind of the things that we know are wrong with dealerships, so it's, they're funny, but they're kind of there to point out those things that can be fixed. But yeah, you can go to those things. I'm on Twitter, W Playford, you can look me up there, but, I gotta tell you, I love talking to dealerships all over the country. That's one of my things that I'm most proud of is the fact that we just work so many places. It comes down to that formula like we talk about, but the water boils at different temperatures, no matter what your altitude is. Right. So, just little things like that. So, I feel like our clients really get that from us is the fact we have been to so many markets. We have talked to so many people over the years and just every brand but Ferrari we work with, seriously. So, but that all goes into our content. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to come check out our blogs, read our stuff. We actually have a bunch of different ways to contact us. We get a lot of Ask the Expert type content. So we love those types of things because that helps us understand what's going on in the community so that we can best learn things and help. We educate ourselves just as much as we educate dealers, so if there's things we need to research, I always like to get those those signals from people as well. So thanks for giving us the opportunity, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here and talk about this stuff.
No, Bill, thanks, man. I really appreciate your passion and commitment to this industry. It's so awesome to be able to jam with like-minded people like yourself. Thank you again for taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
We covered a bunch of great topics today. What stood out most to you? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like the post and share it to keep the conversation going. You can follow Jason on all social media platforms by following Strategy with Jason. You can find him pretty well everywhere you can share content. I hope we were able to get you thinking. And until the next time, this has been Nathan with Digital Dealership Solutions. Have a great day.